Hey guys, how's everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I would love to say it's the next day, but it's actually the same evening. I'm about to get into the reassembly of Chris's 1-10 here. I think I'm just going to video little bits and pieces, take some still images, and get a video together basically showing what's went into it. I cleaned up the bottom end. One thing I did notice I didn't when I tore it down, there was a hairline scratch below the intake port. I have taken some still images of the cleanup work and stuff I done to the saw or to the engine. That's not going to hurt a thing. I took some sandpaper to it. It's fine. Anything below the intake, anything really below the exhaust port doesn't matter anyway, unless it's just, a big gouge and just, something horrible. But we cleaned up the exhaust port and polished it. This was not a, wasn't meant to be no hot rod build. I just kind of done that as preventative maintenance, so, carbon will be less likely to stick to that port in the future. And while I was there, I just went ahead and took a cartridge roll and knocked back some of the casting imperfections on the intake. Left a little texture on it. 9 out of 10 people would tear the saw down, not even know that anything was touched. But got a good sound, solid bottom end together. We replaced this PTO crank seal. If you'll remember, the one that came out of it was hard as a rock. And honestly, I think this thing was kind of low hour. The bearings felt amazing. It had really good compression, and what little carbon was on top of the piston really just wiped off the shop towel. So I've got some still images I'll put up somewhere about right here, and then I'll bring you guys back. Alright guys, I'm going to get into a little bit of assembly on this. What I will more than likely do first on this project is get the muffler back on it and get this shroud back on it. And if you need to know how to tear this down, you can refer back to the tear down video. I went in pretty dang good detail on tearing one of these down, but that's the first step in this process on reassembling one of these. I'll bring you back once I've got that on there. Alright guys, so where we're at, we've got our shroud. I cleaned it up, and if you'll remember, his muffler cover was just rotted completely out in the bottom. Luckily, I was able to locate one. We've got it here on the saw. So honestly, the next step in this process that I like to do myself is we're going to get the tank assembly out down here that we're going to use on this build, and get it on the saw. I'm going to take an air hose to it, but as you can see, it's about the same exact thing as his, but the only difference being is it accepts the SDC Walbro style carburetor. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to get this worked onto the saw, and the main thing you want to watch for on these is make sure that your oiler arm goes into the plunger on the manual oiler. Where you're on, in this case, you're not going to have any oiler at all. But I'll bring you guys back shortly. Alright guys, it has been a minute or 20 or 30 or a couple hours. We ran into issues when we went to put the tank on, and I just noticed this tank's oil knob's broke, so I have to pull the knob out of his tank or another tank and put in this, because he has to have that. It's a manual oil saw. We've been over that, but these screws go through the carb, through the tank. It's not like a typical 1010. There's only 2 holes in the base on his tank originally, but what I'm getting at is the bolt holes in the cylinder block are the smaller size. Not for sure exactly what size, not for sure exactly what size is supposed to go into these things when the guy at the parts store came up with it some oddball machined thread screw. What I ended up doing, which I had everything here but screws, and the screws I bought, I ended up having to turn the shoulders down on them in the lathe to make them work. We had to drill out and re-tap the bolt holes in his cylinder. It's either that or find another cylinder. I probably could have found one here, but his was in such good shape, you know, had such good compression, I just wanted to reuse it all. So that was kind of a hiccup in the deal, but we got a SDC Walbro on it. Shouldn't be too long now, guys. I've got to get this bottom handle on. I got to wire up my chip, get the flywheel on, clutch on, handlebar, and she'll about be a done deal. I'm anxious to hear this thing pop over and run myself, but when I get this chip on and wired up, some other things, I guess I'll bring you guys back and give you a look at what's going on. Alrighty guys, I've shown this before, but these chips are pretty simple. I mount them down here. This one comes from Sawzilla, it's Pro Line. You can buy others. I will warn you, some of the cheaper ones that are like $9 or $10. You have to advance the timing a lot, but these seem to do really well with no timing advance at all. But you got one comes around, goes to the coil, goes to the same place your breaker points wire would have went. Then I always take the ground. You can ground it right back to the chip. It's no big deal as long as it's grounded to the chassis of the saw, but I like to bring it around, ground it right to the coil. But we're going to get that side cover on. I'm going to dig the clutch out and get it back on, get the bearing greased up on it, and hopefully we get to hear this thing run. I've got to drive the roll pin out and get that plunger out, but that is no big deal at all. I may wait and do that tomorrow or another day when I get into the bar and chain and do test cuts with it. But as far as tonight, I'd like to hear the thing run. I've sat here and fooled with it all evening. Well, Chris, I think you said it'd been the 80s since this thing had ran last. Probably, I'd say you was probably right. I've still got a lot of tinkering to do with it. I'm going to come up the handle over here. It just kind of fell apart. Alright guys, I'm going to call that success for the moment. We already went over everything we done. We basically freshened up, resealed the bottom end, cleaned up the ports, put an electronic ignition chip in it. I've shown you that. I think I even took a high-res still shot of it. You know, we swapped out the tank. I showed where I had to drill out and re-tap the holes in the cylinder. Not a big issue. She is sounding good. Sounds like a 1010, which it's a 1-10, but guys, they're all the same layout. I about bet I could have put a degree wheel on it or finder, and all the ports would have been the same as, say, a ProMac 1010. What we've got left to do, it'll probably honestly be one day next week, before I get back in here and go to messing with this, is there's a little roll pin here we've got to drive out. I've got to put a plunger in for the oiler. For some reason, the one that was on this tank we put on it was broken. I've got to clean up the bar and make sure it's dressed good. We've got to get his chain dialed in, and I've got to find a handle for this. This one just kind of fell apart. I knew it was going to. What's left of it down there is laying on the floor. It looked pretty rough to start with, but the only reason I've got that bar on it is to take up space where it's a right-hand start and the, you know, the recoil mechanism's over there. But his air filter looks pretty good, honestly. It should all just sit right back down on there. You know, be right back to where it was at before we tore it down. We'll see how she fires back up here. I've only heat cycled it a few times really once I got it dialed in. She got a good rich idle. But guys, I'm gonna wrap it up on this one. It'll be 2 videos. The 3rd video will be a short one. I'll probably do this off camera. I may show dressing the bar. I can't dress it the way I normally would. My big bench grinder just said no more. It was done. But you know, we'll get it lined out, get the saw cutting, and get it cleaned up and get it sent back home. Till next time, thank you guys for watching. Everybody stay safe, and y'all have a great day.